Good afternoon, everybody. This is Joe Bergamini coming to you with the Sabian Education Network. Welcome once again to a wonderful hour, jam-packed, inspiring, fun-filled, information-filled, and potentially funny hour of brotherhood of us drum teachers and drum artists and teachers. So welcome, everybody. Come on in. Looking forward to having you all here with us again. As always, type in your questions. Dom had another wonderful session yesterday with the New York-based drum set player and timbalero, Mr. Victor Rendon, was tremendous. I really enjoyed that. And Victor talked about how even he's an experienced world-class player, and not a young-hearted man, but Victor's like our age, and he still studies on a regular basis. It was very inspiring.
Yeah. Very dedicated. And, it's amazing because the enthusiasm of constantly being a student is part of the theme with all this here. And we've got two perfect examples with Keith and Fred here who are that way also.
Yes, absolutely. I'm really excited. And we were saying before we went live that this looks so professional. I mean, these guys, Keith and Fred, their setups just look so great. You're in for a big treat with Fred because he has one of the most advanced setups I've seen, and he's going to give us a guided tour. So, gents, welcome. I'd like to introduce them to our friends. Both guys, as you can see by their lovely choice in wardrobe, are friends of SEN. They've both been with me on panels at events in LA and Nashville. And so it's nice to have the guys back, and I know they're going to be full of great information. So up to my right, we have coming to us from the LA area, Mr. Fred Dinkins. Welcome, Fred.
Hello, everyone.
So Fred, both of these guys today have quite an extensive resume as players, and Fred's played with Al Green, Stevie Wonder, Verdine White, musical director for the Emotions and playing with them. And has performed with, he's Grammy-nominated. I believe, was that with your work with Tremaine Hawkins, Fred? Or
Yeah.
So Grammy nominee with that. He's been as an educator on the cutting edge for 3 decades, plus teaching at Musicians Institute in Hollywood. And he's also the author of a classic book that's been out for quite a long time called It's About Time.
Yeah, great book.
So that's just a brief introduction to Fred. So thanks for joining us. And then below him, we have Keith Dudek coming to us from Nashville. Keith, another old friend of SEN, welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Keith's also a tremendous player. One thing I found out about him today when I was just doing a quick little research, I did not know, for some reason, he probably told me, but I forgot, that he marched with the world famous DCI Corps of Madison Scouts on the Snare line for 3 seasons. Wow. And explains his killer chops that I've always noticed. And he's also recorded and toured with many artists. Has played on the CMT Awards. He's played with Lee Greenwood, Little Big Town, Charlie Daniels. He's played at the Grand Ole Opry multiple times, so very successful in Nashville. And I know from having him on our SEN events that he's an extremely dedicated private teacher as well. So Keith, welcome.
Thank you.
So guys, we're like I said, we're all teaching remotely now, and you guys both have really wonderful looking studios. And I think I wanted to just start there. So Dom, normally you've been in your office sometimes, but now you're in the woodshed.
Yeah.
So your studio has always had this great thing, but you want to give us, since this is the first time you're on from there, show us real quick.
I built this studio about 15 years ago. It's a 24 by 22 foot room built out of cement in the backyard of my property. I'm on about an acre of property here in Long Island. So in the back corner of the property, I built this studio, and it's completely soundproof. It's sound contained. A door that opens out, a door that goes in, and once you're in here, nobody hears anything. So I can come out here at 3 a.m, which I do many times in my pajamas. And if I have an idea, I can start playing. And I put, panels on the walls to have, a certain acoustical sound in here. 2 drum sets behind me that I have. I've got a reading station where I've got snare drums. I've got a classical snare drum. I've got a marching snare drum and an old Moeller drum that was sent to me by the Cooperman family. That is a drum that Sanford Moeller designed. And when Moeller had died in the middle 60s, the Cooperman Company sent a Moeller drum to Jim Chapin as a thank you for continuing on the lessons of what Moeller taught. When Jim died in 2009, 11 years ago, the Koopman Company called me up and said, because you're continuing on with what Jim Chapin continued on for Moeller, we want to send you a Cooperman drum. So they sent me this drum, which is a Moeller design drum, calfskin head, gut string on the bottom. It sounds fantastic. And that's what I call our reading station. So the practice pad station here that I've got right in front of me, that's got my practice pad and my pedals here. That's here. Technique station number 1, reading station number 2, and drum set station number 3. This works out so well. I've got it all wired up and hooked up for the internet and cameras and stuff. But I've been doing this for over 20 years with this online teaching stuff. So this has been nothing new to happen to me. I just kind of continued on. So good fun stuff.
It looks great, Doc. It looks great. Keith, your studio looks really nice there. You look like it looks so professional, like it's pro lighting and everything. Is that your normal teaching space, or?
It is my normal teaching space, especially since the COVID stuff hit. I started doing online stuff all the way, just like everybody else. I've never done those before. Like, this was my very first time doing online lessons, and I've really come to enjoy it. I really enjoy it a lot. I do mostly concert percussion with my students. I teach 6th through 12th graders, mostly kids who are in public school band. So I don't do a lot of drum set in my teaching, a little bit, but I do that for more of the advanced students. I teach some basics along the way, but it's mostly concert percussion. So we do a lot of snare drum, marimba, 4-mallet stuff, timpani. So
very, very well versed. I didn't know that your drum set students are less than your snare drum and classical type marching students.
Yeah.
All the drum corps experience comes in real handy.
Exactly.
Yeah. And did you do a remind me what was your college, like? Did you do a drum set at one of the bigger schools for your major?
I actually went to a couple of different small schools. I went to Grand Valley State University in Michigan, and I went to the University of Nebraska at Omaha.
Okay.
Attended both those schools and did music ed at both.
Oh, great. Okay. Yeah. Wonderful. And then real quick, so your set looks beautiful there. You got some nice Sabian there. Blow you up here.
It's the Apex Saturn. It's a Saturn 4, but I got the bearing edges redone, so it's technically like a Saturn 5. All my artisan Sabian cymbals.
Great. Looks wonderful.
Thank you.
Cool. So we're gonna come and circle back around and talk about a lot of education topics. But Fred, switching up to you, man.
All right.
Coming to us from LA, and we had an interesting talk because he also has a soundproof studio. But Fred, if you don't mind, do you want to give us a guided tour of your tech setup? Because you got some really cool stuff going on with how you're switching the cameras, and you've been doing it a long time. So take it away.
Yeah, basically I have a 5-camera setup with I'm using a Roland VH1 camera switcher, which allows me to do like several camera switches. And then I also have an extended camera switcher hooked up to that. That gives me more cameras if I want to. So I have like a foot cam. If let's say if student wants to see, bass drum technique. But the other cool thing is that I'm able to do it like without moving a couple of the angles. Like I have some pads here that I just hit and it switches.
Wow.
And then for the foot technique, I have that. If I hit these 2 pads at the same time, I go back to the other one. And then I use like a wireless mouse to give you different angles. So you would have this. So you see picture in picture.
Wow.
Fantastic.
That one. Then I have split screens.
Wow.
Which a lot of people like this one. So it's a lot I can do, with this setup.
That's amazing. That is amazing. And with the switcher, we did a test for this, Fred, and you're really well versed with the system, but it doesn't seem that it works well even with some of these things like StreamYard and all these sites. You find out there's little glitches as you work through it, but it seems that you have like a pretty seamless experience doing it with all your students switching. And do you use Zoom when you do the lessons, or what do you?
I mean, I pretty much use every format. I use FaceTimes, Skype, but 95% of the time I'm on Zoom now.
Uh-huh.
You know?
And you can, so when you have the switcher, you can make that work with every single like platform, Skype, FaceTime.
Yeah, no issues.
So what do you have to use OBS or how does it work?
No, I'm just going straight through from the internet. So what I do is I pipe my sound through an Apollo interface, and coming out of that into the camera switcher. So when I basically play, you get a 2-track stereo mix of my sound.
Wow. And that's hooked up right now, right? Like we can hear it right now.
Yeah, I can mute. So
yeah, give us just a very quick sample of that. Yeah, it sounds great.
Beautiful.
Perfect. I like Manton was our guest last week. I love that. That was Manton's comment to Fred's camera setup. And of course, Pete Gamber, all our regular. Fred, your setup is killer, man. One of the most killer we've seen. So it's really exciting. And are you using? I know this is essentially your home studio. So are you using this to teach students at MI as well?
Yes. Yeah. So matter of fact, after this is over, I start straight 4 or 5 hours at MI back to back.
So do they all the professors have to have like this set up now to teach remote classes with COVID and all, or?
Yeah, they have setups, but not like pretty much like what I've done. Like basically what happened to me was I got offered to teach some students from China and Korea, and they came on and they looked at my setup and they laughed. They said, "Man, you're in the dinosaur age compared to what we have." And and I was like, "Wow." He says, "We don't mean to hurt your feelings or anything, but if you're gonna teach these schools, you got to be ready for the students because we're light years ahead of all you guys in technology."
Wow.
As a matter of fact, some of the stuff they tried to get me to buy, Amazon couldn't sell it in the U.S. It wasn't allowed to be sold in the U.S. So
wow.
I did my investigations and trial and error here and there and here we are.
Yeah. And so you've had that camera switcher set up and everything for how long?
At least almost a year.
Okay.
But I've been teaching online, like Dom said. I've been teaching online, man, for at least 20 years myself.
Yeah. Cool. Did you? I was looking at your website. You have a. I want to talk to both of you guys about your great products that you have. But you're doing a class? Did I see on your site that you're doing like a?
Yeah. The 22nd of July, I'm doing a master class based on my book. It's About Time.
And people can sign up at your site for that?
At my site.
Awesome. And I'll share a link to that as always in the comments when we're finished and in the site. So
what's Fred's website?
It's just Fred, www.freddinkins.com. www.freddinkins.com.
I'll put that on the screen as well. Yeah, Fred, go ahead.
And the master class is literally the second thing you'll see on the website.
Is it right, Fred?
Yes, that's it.
All right, cool. So yeah, check that out. It looked really interesting. Keith, what's been your experience so far with your schedule? Are you still, teaching? How are you handling teaching your normal, middle school, elementary school, high school students and all that?
It's gone incredibly well. I'm super blessed. All my students have stayed on with me. No one's quit. So through the COVID thing, it's been a blessing. Because the gigs, as we know, have kind of gone away. So there's not much performing going on. I have done a couple of tours down in Texas, a couple one-off gigs, but that's about it over the last 3, 4, or 5 months. But all my students stayed with me. So I'm running about 20 students out of my studio, and I switched to total online, and I actually love it. I think some of my kids have really gained and done even better with online lessons than in person. So I think the shift has been good for some of the kids.
Right.
But I'm slowly starting to get them back involved in personal lessons at my studio again. I'm slowly integrating them because where I live in suburbs of Nashville, it's pretty open. We're pretty much wide open for business. So.
And when you jumped in, so I was teaching online quite a lot before, not as long as Fred or Dom, but when it hit, you just kind of like, you did the whole, like, just jump it. This is how it's got to be. I'm jumping in.
Absolutely. I got my iPhone put up and that little holder and the stand and stuff, and got some lights and got the background set up and hit the ground running. So yeah, it's fun. It's been really cool. It's been rewarding. It's nice. I think the accountability of having the parents with the students at their homes, studios, and making sure they have their metronome ready to go. And I have them do all their scales on their bells and run the rudiments for me on their pads. And we do a mallet solo for bells. And then we also do a snare solo for the kids. So it's been great.
That's great. That's great. And yeah, I think that we've talked about keeping things more organized with the younger students like that. And it's been a real learning process, but there's things that are great about it. Are you, you were on our panel, right? Were you on the panel when I was in Nashville, or?
I wasn't on the panel. I did attend it, but I wasn't on the panel. Okay. I was the teaching panel with you at PASIC last year.
That's right. That's right. We've been having so many great panels. They're all like a party that blend together. I can't.
You guys are busy. You and Dom are busy running around doing all kinds of great educational stuff. I appreciate you guys.
Well, thank you. And you're always so involved. The Nashville event was great. It was very well attended, and the one we did at MI in LA was also really well attended. Let me put up a question here. It scrolled up. It's from Kelly Ray Tubbs, our old friend. Hey, Kelly.
Kelly's great.
Kelly is awesome.
And a great historian.
Whoever wants to take this, first raise your hand. Which interface, Zoom, Skype, or FaceTime, has the minimal audio and video lag?
I'd go with Zoom.
Yeah, so would I.
Yeah, easy.
I haven't done Zoom yet. I'm still looking into it. So I'm doing FaceTime and Skype pretty much officially. So
yeah, FaceTime. I'm not sure you can record the lesson on FaceTime. I know Zoom. You can allow and give permission to record, and I like the students to record it so they have that accessibility to go back through it. But Zoom also has some audio settings that you can adjust that are pretty helpful.
Yeah. I've been finding that Zoom, like, it seems like if a student has a bad Wi-Fi connection, as we've talked about in previous sessions, it can be, regardless of platform, it can be a challenge. But Zoom seems to latch on pretty well. Like, so, and I've after sort of like just dabbling in it now, the last couple of weeks, it's been 90% of my lessons. I mean, I just, for my setup, the fact that it integrates with my mixer just like that, and I get all the channels in there, just makes it a no-brainer. And also you can share screen and hear the audio coming from the student. So if it's a young student and they have an MP3 and they share screen, then you can work around that, getting them to play to a track, which I couldn't figure out for a long time. But I'm a slow learner, so hey, what do you expect? Yeah, this is one for you before we go away from the camera switching thing from our friend Tony McNally. Tony wants to know, I'm using a Roland switcher as well, but what's the other switcher you're using for the additional cameras, please?
It's a simple camera switcher, $14, $15, HDMI. And I have a daisy chain out of one of the inputs for the Roland. So like I have it like camera 3, I have the HDMI coming out of camera 3 into that external camera switcher. Now I have 3 other slots that's open for me to switch, and I'm using that with the remote control that you see here.
Okay.
That gives me the 3 angles, so it works like that. So now you see me here. And then once I click it again, I'll be over there. Now that's that view. And then back to the middle.
Wow.
You got to realize too that Tony McNally is from the UK. Pull this question up again, Joe.
Sure, yeah.
You got to get a kick of where bring up Tony's question again. You got to bring up the last sentence. Also, is it via MIDI that you're toggling camera shots /PIP from the pads?
No.
This is the new English language that we have now.
No. That's
VIP, via. Come on, bring it on.
Dom, don't try to read that again. You're going to hurt yourself. Let Fred answer.
No, I'm not using MIDI at all. What happens with this switcher? It's kind of like my secret that I'm giving out. if you go into any microphone XLR cable and you go in with a 1/4 inch cable, whatever you plug into that, it's gonna send a signal to that particular mic input. And now the switcher is thinking that, like with Zoom or podcast, when you talk, the mic lights up over here, and now this person is highlighted and you can hear them talk. Well, that's what's going on there. When I hit that pad, that switcher thinks that, camera 1 is talking now. So you go to camera 1, but it's actually the camera. And then you hit number 2, it's like, camera 2 is now talking. So I'm switching via sending a spike into each mic input.
Man, this is like, I think, Fred, you're definitely the only person I know that's, but after today, you might not be.
Well, I heard Weckel is kind of doing almost similar. And somehow, someone said he had a foot switch, which I can also do that as well if I chose to do that. But I don't know. And also, by the way, too, I mean, it's a plug, but I'm using all Zoom cameras as well.
Yes.
Which works perfect because they give me the ability to like zoom in and zoom out and get it exactly where I want it. And they stay there unless I want to change it. So every time I fire everything up, bam, everything is just like I left it.
Yeah, it's great, David. I bought a couple of their stand mount things for mine.
Oh yeah,
they're great. And now I have them because so I'm only running 3 cameras, but I can move them around to wherever I want. I know I'm going to get the same shot if I take it off, or if I want to get the SD card out. So that link's really helpful.
So do all of you guys use Zoom cameras?
Well, I have a couple of them. I actually use this Mac, that onboard one.
Okay.
And then I switch to foot cam, and then I have a GoPro. But yeah, it's like, if you poll everybody, I think there's a mix, but the Zoom ones are good too, because I could, when gigs, resume, like if I was playing a Broadway show, I would take the Q2N or its predecessor with me, and I would actually split my headphone out from the monitor rig and record the show so I could check my playing. And I would keep the Zoom in my backpack, so it was like perfect for that.
Right.
Probably other device that could do it, but that's what I used. So, great. I want to ask you, gents, about your books, but first, there's a question for Dom from my friend Michael Rafter. Hey, Michael, it's nice to see you again. Just so you guys know, Michael and I met at the NAMM show. He invested. He's a California resident, but he invested in coming to the NAMM show. He's been a very active member of SEN from the very beginning. Very dedicated teacher from the LA area. So you can see the question, Tom. I'm curious, why use 3 stations?
To why I use 3 stations for a student and how to divide the time between each station. Great question, Mike. I think what's interesting about it is I put the 3 stations together inspired by a lot of the teachers that I learned from. Morello, who taught a lot of hand technique, Jim Chapin, who had his book with some jazz stuff, and Shelly Mann, I studied with, who was really into reading. And those were areas that were balanced within what I felt I wanted my students to have. So station number 1, which is the practice pad, I've got my Vader pads here, I've got my double pedals here, and I've got a practice pad here. So from this area, I've got a setup, and my student has a setup. And the student will come in and sit down, and there's a mirror in front of them, and there's a mirror to their right. So when the student's playing, they can see the mirror. They've got the mirror here. I've got cameras set up everywhere so they can see it on a couple of flat screen TVs that I have in here. And with that, the learning process amplifies what they're doing. They get to really see and analyze the movement that they're learning in the technique station. Station number 2 is the reading station. I have a classical snare, a modern marching snare drum, and a Moeller drum. And part of that is we'll go through Portraits and Rhythms, we'll go through the Fred Albright book, we'll go through Pratt book, we'll go through Wilcoxon, Nard, whatever we have that I want to work with the student in that reading station. It's all according to what level they're at. I might have a student that's an advanced rock player, but a beginner jazz player. So when we get to the drum set, there might be a series of different books that I might align for them. These three areas depends on what the student wants to learn and what I feel the student needs to learn. So we map out a plan together in what we're going to do. Now, in a lesson, we might spend an entire lesson just on the practice pads, just working on technique for that lesson. We might spend one other lesson just on reading, another lesson just on drum set, or there might be any combination of that. I might work 30 minutes on their hands to get them ready, 5 minutes on a reading passage, and then we hop on the drum set. It might be 15 minutes of a warm-up on the practice pad to learn a new technique, then hop on the drum set and work out of Gary Boldy's book, Future Sounds. So there's a wide variety. I use books the way a doctor uses prescriptions and drugs. I assign that book for what we're trying to achieve out of that student. And in those three areas that I have, it allows me to then design what area works best for what we're trying to achieve. So the design of each student is different. It's exciting, and that's what makes it fun for me. I started teaching this morning with a student in China at 8 o'clock. I'm going straight through. I just finished a 2-hour session in the UK of a master class to about 55 students. After this lesson, I've got a 2-hour lesson with a student in New Hampshire, and I'm going straight through until 8 tonight, a student in Japan, which is 13 hours ahead of New York time, which is 9 o'clock in the morning in Japan and Tokyo. So it's a full day of the intensity, and each student is different. That's what brings the excitement in education.
Yes. I don't know, Keith, I'm telling you, man, between Fred and Dom, these guys, like, after this is over, I was just going to cut my lawn. These guys are 12 hours. Man, very impressive. But that was amazing, Dom, and a great segue, actually, too, because both of these gents are authors of wonderful books. I wanted to start with Keith. He has a snare drum book that, Keith, I think you co-wrote with Ed Freytag, who wrote the Rudimental book, which is a book I love.
Sure did.
Can you give us an overview of your book?
Sure. It's called the Orchamental Snare Drum Collection.
Nice.
And it's part of the workshop series on roll-off. You can see roll-off there in the bottom. And it's a series of snare drum solos that Ed and I wrote, solos and duets. And the idea that we came up with was to write creative snare drum solos for middle school and early high school development that are creative solos. So we used a lot of rim and stick clicks and playing the side of the shell and actually the stand, playing with your hands, putting your sticks down, using brushes. So we're looking for more of a creative approach to keep kids interested and keep it fun. That's the biggest reason why we did it. So we really enjoy the book, and it's been fun, and I'm using the solos with all my kids, and it's starting to sell more. So I'm grateful for that. So that's on Roll-Off. You can look that up.
Can you
rolloff.com.
Oh, rolloff.com. Okay, I'll share that. Can you hold up a page to the camera? You're close enough there. We can see a little bit of more of what it looks like on the inside.
So here's a solo called The Right Start. And it's basic snare drum stuff early starting in, but then you can see at section B, there's some rim stuff going on. Kind of an echo thing.
Beautiful.
See how that works?
Fantastic.
Yeah. Cool.
Fantastic.
And then we do some shell stuff down lower in the solo. You play on the shells and you do some stick clicks. So it's creative stuff, different things for the kids to have some fun with instead of playing in the middle of the snare drum 95% of the time. So we're working technique, don't get me wrong. I mean, we're still working all the basics, accent tap, stick control, all the rudiments, but I just think those creative solos really help. I played a solo in high school called Hensey's Frenzy. Any of you guys ever remember that one?
No.
It had a pencil in one hand. You played with the eraser. You played with your fingers. You play with one stick. You play with your hands, and that just got me going. I was excited. I loved it.
Performed, yes.
It was so fun. Yeah.
The roll-off series is really nice too. It looks just like the Rudimental Cookbook. The sticking's very clear.
Yep.
And the Rudimental Cookbook has a drum corps sticking logic, which is something as a student gets more advanced. When you have a younger student, you use one sticking logic. Usually it's strong hand dominated, and then drum will do that too. But I find it actually helpful as a place to start with a younger student. So it's cool that it follows that same system, right?
You got it. Yep.
Yeah. Cool. Fred,
Yes, sir.
your book has been around a long time. It's a classic, but for those who haven't seen it, can you give us a brief overview of It's About Time?
Sure. I came up with this book actually way before it was actually put out, and Dom could attest to that.
Yeah, I saw it. Yeah.
I had it. I basically started out working on all this stuff for myself because I had wanted a career playing live, and one of the biggest things that playing live, you don't always use a click when you play R&B. Like with the Emotions and Denise Williams, you can start the song out with a click, but you cannot keep that click going because they want to move like on the bridges. Verse come back, they push, and so I had to get used to playing without a click. And years ago, I saw Harvey Mason play a clinic where he played 8 bars at a time and 8 bars of space. That shook me like you would not believe. So when I moved to LA, I said, man, how do I do that? He said, start with 1 bar. And I had a book out that I had 1 bar at a time and had all these exercises of the upbeats. Because one thing I learned from Efren Toro was that you have to master the upbeats in time. So I had a bar space, you play a groove, and then the next measure, you play all the different permutations of the 16th note. Then I had 2 bars, 4 bars, and students were bugging me like crazy. Why don't you put this in a book? So I put it in a book form and I called it Time Test. And then finally I got with Warner Brothers, and they had a poll that says, man, you can't keep this as Time Test. The word time scares everybody. You'll never sell a test. You'll never sell a book. Anytime someone says test, they're gonna run. So someone was in the meeting. We were on a conference call, and someone said, "Yeah, man, it's about time he actually finished it." And someone said, "That's it. It's about time." And we all agreed, and there you have the book. So basically, I try to get you to play and master playing with the click, and then also understand what your time does when you play without a click.
Yeah.
Do you rush? Do you drag? What is it that you do? And once you know what that is, you learn how to control that better. Because if you're aware that, like, man, I always rush. I have students go, I always rush my field. So if they become aware of what they do and they know when they're doing it and why it's happening, then they can fix it.
Right.
And same thing with slowing down. So it's a bunch of drills in there. It's a bunch of play alongs. So it's a lot. It's deceiving, I should say. The fifth limb is very deceiving. I used to get really crazy emails that I overdubbed the counting that I do with that. So that's a lot of that stuff is going on throughout the world now. Benny Greb is doing it. A lot of people is doing it. But I'm glad I have this format, this stage to say, hey, I've been doing this probably way before those guys were born. And like I said, Dom could attest to that.
I remember years ago, and I use the book with my students because it really makes sense and to understand time. Nothing we can do, if it doesn't have that basis of understanding time, it just doesn't sound good. So that's the time understanding is what equates to feel. For feel to be good, you have to understand time. So the book really helps out tremendously.
Yeah, a lot of people don't get like, oh, I could play to a click, but what happens between beat to beat? Yeah. There's a lot of little nuances going on there. Yeah. There's a lot of subdivisions that's going on that most people are not aware of. So when you have a guitar player like, let's say, Ray Parker Jr. or Paul Jackson Jr. coming in playing all these rhythms against you, your time has to be there where when they play, their notes sound correct.
Yeah.
And if you're off, they're gonna tell you because these guys are masters of time, man.
Yeah.
And I've been blessed to play with some amazing players that, like, when I first moved to LA, first thing they said, Fred, time, bro, you got to get that thing together. And I was like, oh man. So I came up with all these different exercises and drills, man. And I still work on this stuff to this day. Though I wrote the book, I still practice my own drills to this day. And sometimes I tell you, I suck like I never wrote the book.
Yeah. Man, it's really inspiring to hear you say that, Fred, because it's I've been, still noticing those things. And I can tell you from just all the Broadway work I've done, if you go in and you're, if you want to work, like you say in the book, you discovered this, you're doing gigs, and then somebody says, hey man, lay back there a little, or, you're edging the click there. I want you to play, bury the click or whatever. Like it's sometimes if you get into the heat of battle, like on a gig, and you haven't paid attention to this, you could potentially lose work. Like we drummers just spend so much time on the technical, which is important, but yours is one of the few resources that lets you work on this. I, kind of learned it the hard way. And I actually played with a bass player on Broadway that played with Dennis Chambers. And when I went back and listened to a recording of them playing together, it was like just enlightening to me. And of course, I was nervous on the gig, so of course I was ahead. And this guy I was playing with came from a bit of an R&B background where he wanted to lay back. I listened to him playing with Dennis, and it was like the front edge of Dennis's kick drum note was like you heard the attack of the bass and then Dennis's bass drum.
Yeah,
like a hand in a glove every note. If you listen to the recordings where they played together, it started to make me understand what this bass player wanted to hear from the drummer. And then I realized, like, wow, like all the people in New York who get the top calls can achieve it. So if you can't achieve it, you're not going to get the top calls,
Right. And that's the chapter in my book, Time Movement, is the exact reason why I wrote that, because I noticed a lot of students on a gig, someone would say to someone, lay back, and they would get that deer in the headlight look, like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Or play on top, give me more. They're not saying rush or slow down. It's a feel. And I often say it's like, as a drummer, we're like actors or actresses, that we have to set the whole scene by how we play and what we play. So it's like if it's a ballad, it's just a sad song. It's like, man, you gotta make that song feel sad. You gotta make that thing groove to where literally people are crying before they even hear the lyrics, because it's like, man, feel that groove, man. And so that's the biggest thing about the book is like I give exercises to where you can A and B and say, oh, that's in the middle, that's in the back, that's behind, that's on top, so that they can actually hear. So the click is manipulated, with the claps on the 2 and 4. I mainly move the snare drum most of the time. I don't move the bass drum. Sometimes I put everything ahead. Depends on what's going on. But 95% of the time I'm moving the snare drum.
But understand the amount of control that takes with our body and our limbs individually and collectively for what that takes. That's the feel. And as I like to use the word, the choreography of dancing, it's the choreography of drumming. To be able to shift our body that way, that allows the feel and the groove to adapt to what it is. Fred, if I could play half as good as you say you suck, I'd love to have that. I'd be a much better player.
Oh, man. Yeah.
Well, that's amazing. I would highly recommend everybody check out the book. It's funny. I'm working on a little biographical project about Jeff Porcaro, who was famous for his great group. And one of the things that I was happy to learn about Jeff was that he had to learn. He was famous for laying it back, but he had to learn that when he first started getting the gigs. It was like he had to learn it. But the thing that made me laugh was he has a story where after he sort of became known for that, on a lot of the recordings he was doing with Boss Skaggs and Toto, where they didn't record with a click and he was playing really on the backside, he'd be playing around town. And he was there's a story I heard that he's playing a gig with Greg Mattison at the Big Potato, and of course, and Greg was laying it way back, and then Jeff was playing with him, and Jeff's playing with him. He's like, so after they get to the break, he goes over to Greg. He's like, you heard him lay it back? He's like, don't do that. Let me do that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So it's like the feel of the interplay of who's going to be where in the feel. You know what I mean? I thought that was.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, the drummer's in control. I mean, I used to. I mean, you guys know. I mean, I'm still grieving pretty hard because Joe passed on Monday.
Yeah.
And Joe was literally like my dad. And when I say my dad, I'm really like saying my dad. And when I met Jeff used to take me around with him, and I literally would sit right here by the floor tom, and he would be talking to me. And he used to tell me, like you saying, when he told me, he says, man, when I practice with a click, I named that click Lenny. He says, because Lenny Castro is my good friend, and I always like playing percussion beside me. And when Lenny gets off, I cuss him out so bad. And I stop and go, Lenny, you follow me. He says, Fred, that's something that you got to get used to doing. If you get off the click, you cuss that click out and you make that click follow you.
That's so great. And Dom, you knew Joe well too, didn't you?
I met Joe in 1976 when I met Jeff when I moved to California. And Jeff and I became, very close friends. It was just so great having met Joe and having taken some lessons with Joe at that time at the Dick Grove Workshop. That was a school that was out there in the Hollywood area, just opposite where Sportsman's Lodge is. It was a wonderful area. And Joe was just brilliant in how he taught in all of his days of teaching. I spoke to him just a few months ago, and he really became a father to everybody. He was just such a blessed person that when you were in his presence, you just became a better person just being near him. Mm-hmm. You forget his incredible knowledge. And this is a guy that played percussion with Emil Richards, his dear friend. And Joe was very sad when Emil passed away. They did all the Star Wars, all the Godfather. There's the movies, the most classic movies Joe Percaro was on. And I've gone to several of them throughout the years and witnessed him playing a lot of those. And it was just really magical to see his reading, his feel, his understanding of music, his composition. This was a man that was really a superior musician at many levels.
Yeah, what a gift he gave to everyone with his wonderful sons who are such great musicians, and and he had a hard to lose two of his sons before him. That's a hard life. So
yeah,
they are together again. So there's an incredible groove that's going on up now in heaven, which is going to be pretty deep. That hopefully at some point in our lives we will be able to experience that in our future lives for sure.
Oh yeah, I just wrote a quick thing up. I give you a snippet of it, but the first thing I said, man, God called Joe up to heaven to get the snare players together because they all had the drags in the wrong spots. and he went up there going, look it. Let me show you how to do this. So I wrote up something just this morning speaking to that.
That's beautiful, man.
Beautiful.
That's beautiful. Awesome. Let's use the time we have left. I want to get into a little bit more of an educational couple of questions.
Fred, I got
that thing. Who is that guy? Who is that guy?
The Vader Rudimental Poster, man. You're on there, man, doing it. So you got Fred doing education stuff everywhere.
That's great. That's great.
Wow, that's great.
Awesome. Keith, I want to throw it back to you. What's interesting, Fred being at the MI, the college level, and you being more of a specialist with some of the younger kids. What's it like with all the students you teach in the marching and in your school? Are a lot of them playing drum set? Because we've always discussed on these meetings how there's less kids that do percussion doing drum set. Are you, do you feel like, how can we get more of the kids doing drum corps back into set? Like, do you try to get them into drum lessons? You try to inspire them to listen to different music? How do you feel about that?
I'm trying to inspire them to get to learn how to play kit on a real basic level and get them to enjoy it and show them that they can play drum set. If they can have decent hands, they can play drum set pretty quickly and pretty easily once they get to hand-foot coordination. One of my passions is marching percussion. Obviously, I marched in DCI with Madison Scouts in the late 80s, and then I taught after that, and I've taught marching band, drumline, and university stuff for like 25, 30 years. So there's a lot of experience in marching percussion because I just love it. I love the team aspect of it. But that was one of my biggest reasons why I developed the clinic of the drum set drumline connection that I did at PASIC in 2017. So I'm trying to get kids from the concert percussion and marching percussion into drum set more, because I do think it's fading out as we go. So my heart is there as an educator to get more kids to play drum set. And I used to do drum set camps. I think I'm going to try and start doing them again. It's hard for me around my area to find facilities to do that in, but I really enjoy doing that.
Right. If you have like let's say that you have 20 kids in your area in one of your classes that are percussionists, average, how many of them play drum set nowadays?
I'd probably say half or less.
Half would be good, actually. I hear we've been hearing less than that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Between a half and a quarter, I would say.
Right. Right.
One of my frustrations with the drum set is I think, times have changed with culture and everything, and how the music has spread out. We used to, as we were growing up when we were young, radio was popular. So you just flip on the radio and there were records and it was tangible. And there was music being kind of force fed to you in a limited way. Now it's wide open. And I think it's actually hurt us in some ways that way, from a drum set culture standpoint, in our culture that we're in musically. That's a frustration for me. And it's hard because a lot of the music the pop music today that's on the radio doesn't have drum set. It's kind of like back to the 80s with the drum machine. So how do you inspire a kid to want to play a drum set to it, right? A drum machine track.
Well, we've been talking about the fact that as I talk to educators through SEN around the country, I think it is pretty much measurable that there's less kids playing drum set, within our industry. And I've speculated that, maybe they just don't see the drummers as much. Sometimes you see a video and like, I know I saw, Alex Van Halen and these guys, I saw them on TV playing drums, just like, everyone that I know, Dom, and some of the guys who are a little closer to your age, working on these biographies with Hudson Music. Everyone's like, I saw Ringo on the Ed Sullivan Show and I wanted to play drums. But if you don't see a drummer, you're going to want to play drums. So exactly. I don't know if that's part of it, but at the same time, I was going to throw one to Fred, but Dom, you have a comment first?
And I think what's important is to understand that since we don't have that kind of influence of bands performing where we can see the drummer, it is our responsibility as educators in each lesson. And I do this with every student. I pull up a video, I screen share, and we will take 5 to 7 minutes and we will watch a drummer performing. So I then introduce them and I become the Ed Sullivan Show and I deliver them that level of information. They don't know Cobb Back with Mahavishni. They don't know Gad in the early days of Chick Corea. They don't know Buddy or Elvin and the early days of Philly Joe Jones, or maybe even someone like Art Blakey with the Jazz Messengers that had every great freaking jazz player in Art's band went on to become a superhero in jazz. Right. The Wynton Marsalis and everyone. So we have to be the ones to deliver that. So I ask everyone as an educator to become the Ed Sullivan and be the presenter of that information to that student. So we hook them and inspire them to get them committed.
Yeah. And I agree with that 100%. And all the, I always try to discipline myself. And, I love listening to all styles of music, but I always try to stop short of saying like, the music of today is this or the music of today is that. It's like, just try to stay open-minded. It's so important. And so even if I'm watching the Super Bowl and Brian Fraser Moore is playing on the Super Bowl with an artist playing his cool Sabians with those logos, by the way, I'm wanting them to be more like, James Brown would have been like, give the drummer some, and he would have been full on camera. It's just that they don't show the drummer so much anymore. And we got to, I don't know, maybe we need to form like a lobbying committee or something. We got to get the show the drummer more,
We could just support the mafia. The mafia will do the job for us. They'll get it out.
I'm not commenting on that. But Fred, I mean, I wonder what you think about this statement. So while I have had less younger students playing, and I take students pretty young, and then I teach college age, high schools and pros. I've got a lot of high school kids going on to, send to guys like you at MI, Berkeley, and places like that. The level of my high school students that do get into it is crazy. They get good so fast, and with all the information they have, the students that are coming through your door at MI, have you seen, no, like you've been there long enough to kind of see trends, or are there just as many kids coming in, or are they at a higher level, or do you see it's kind of like the same way it's always been?
It's kind of a mix. Sometimes you get kids coming in with amazing chops and technique, but they don't know what they're doing with it. They just play it. And the biggest thing is for me is to try to teach them how to salvage that and put it into real music so that they can actually get a gig. Then the other kids come in, never played with a band before. They just play. They got their reading to a certain point. Some of them never read before. But the thing about MI is like, man, literally like it's like a freaking assembly plant. By the time they come in there not being able to do anything, when they walk out, they're reading, they're understanding all this stuff, and I actually do a class called How to Practice, where I make them set up schedules and all this kind of thing, and write down how to get to this place, point A to point B. So yeah, it's a mixture. Some come in, like I said, like totally amazing. I mean, like Benny Rogers when he was there, or even like Anderson .Paak.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when I taught Anderson and Benny, Manny, all these guys met, their level of technique and understanding of music was just crazy. All I had to do was fill in the little gaps. They already knew how to play, but there was gaps that I needed to fill in that once that was done, you see the history. These guys are making history.
Yeah.
Totally. Absolutely. Well, I would be remiss before we end, as we always like to do, Dom. We're enabled to gather here by our favorite company, Sabian. So, and we have, I think, in Fred. Fred, how long have you been with Sabian?
Oh man, hold on. I have my letter right here. 1988.
Is it on?
Roy Edmonds.
Roy Edmonds.
Only Don will know that one.
No, I know Roy. I know Roy too.
Roy?
Yeah.
Oh wow, that's crazy.
Look, bro.
Old school. We went back to the early days.
That's early.
The early
That's
days.
early, man.
Yeah. Fred, what do you had that poster on the ceiling or something? You're like,
I have my actual acceptance letter from Sabian as an endorsee, the first gospel drummer to sign with Sabian.
I remember that.
That's great. So
they did not have a gospel
right
thing at Sabian.
That's right.
And I was the first one, and I'm very thankful and blessed to be able to say I opened up the doors for a lot of guys that's playing gospel right now that a lot of them don't even know.
All the guys playing gospel, you open the door. You let them all in.
Yeah.
That's great. It's amazing to see the loyalty. We have so many family members like Fred, Dom, that have been with us for so long. Yeah. And I was always grateful that Sabian brought me on when I was known locally, but that was it. Keith, how long you've been playing Sabian? Quite a while yourself, right?
I think it's about since 2014. Yep.
Great.
I met Chris Stanky at PASIC and NAMM, and I try and go to both those every year, and I see you guys at all those. So it's awesome. Yeah, it's been great. The Sabian family is a blessing. They've been so nice to me, and Mark Love is just what a master.
Oh yeah.
The history he knows about the cymbal, awesome.
Yeah. Well, it's amazing how Sabian's been able to take ideas, even if you just look at the evolution series of cymbals, which, it seems like no matter what style, no matter who my guest is, everyone has an evolution or two. Just goes to show, even if, everyone loves Dave's playing, you may not be playing fusion gigs or jazz fusion gigs like he does, but the cymbals work for everything.
Yeah.
So it just goes to show, and that's Mark interpreting Dave's idea. And even the same thing with some of the Paragon cymbals. There's people using cymbals that are in the Paragon line. They don't hit half as hard as Neil did, but they just like the sound. So it's amazing to see all that. And Keith, Dom, you had something to add to that?
And Mark Love, who's there now, came out of the school of Nort Hargrove, who kind of taught Mark how to hear these sounds and work with this metal to take the science of metal and bring it into the art that we need for expression. When science meets art, that's the brilliance of what Sabian does so well.
Right. And, Keith, you inadvertently mentioned something that Dom always taught me and his other students, which is, I heard you and Fred talking about, St. Louis and Detroit, places, you guys came from and you made the move. But one of the things that you did was you went out to these shows. You were at PASIC. That's how we met. That's how you met Dom. And so you invested in yourself to go and, if people don't know who you are, you're not going to have a relationship with them. So this year, PASIC's going to be online. I guess they made that adjustment. But being at those events is still such an important thing to do. And whenever we go to PASIC, we always try to have an SEN get together of some kind. We change it up. It could be a panel. It could be a meal. So it's really still, I think, very important to get together. It's like a family reunion. You go down there and you.
So, Joe, why don't you organize a SEN event at PASIC? We'll do it on Zoom. Everybody have your own glass of wine, and let's just have a little wine hang and a little meeting at PASIC through Zoom with Joe organizing SEN. Joe, great idea. Go make it happen.
I think that's a wonderful idea. And they have to have the wine. That's very, very, very important. Very important. So Fred, you're off to do a bunch of MI teaching now?
Yeah, I have, like I said, one private and then 4 or 5 hours of MI.
Wow, that's great. And then Keith, you're back in your classes now?
I've continued private lessons at my studio. Hopefully school will reopen. I think that'll be really good for all the kids and the parents. But I'm doing that. And when the school's open, I'm going to try and get as many clinics going as possible and try and follow in Dom's footsteps, because you're the ultimate clinician, my friend. Thank you.
Pretty amazing that we have an opportunity here. What Sabian does so well is they give us this opportunity to be able to stream this through Facebook and YouTube as everybody's joining us. I saw Jim Mola pop on. Jim Mola also mentioned he knew Roy Edmonds, so he goes back to the old days. And it's good to have this level of camaraderie, which is really amazing as it is. And, I say just in closing, we lost Joe Bergamini, so it's important to go back and stand on the shoulders of these great people that came before us, do some research. I did an interview with Joe Bergamini on the Sessions panel. Go watch it in memory of Joe and learn more about Joe's life. But also, as we lost Joe at the age of 90, we celebrate also Ringo turning 80 years young. When I saw him, he was a little 20-year-old kid on the Ed Sullivan Show. So to have grown with this music and be a part of it is so fantastic. And then the ultimate celebration, I just got in the mail this book about Liberty DeVito that Joe had edited through Hudson Music. Unbelievable, this book. I just got it. I can't wait to start reading it and capture the story of another great Sabian artist, Liberty DeVito, who is still doing it with his band, the Slim Kings, and it's fantastic. This is a great read. Everyone should get this for sure.
Thanks, Dom. That was great to work on. And again, a great segue there. If the Liberty and also Rod Morgenstein and David Garibaldi and Billy Cobham, if those names mean anything to you, you're going to want to watch this space in the next few weeks. All of those gentlemen will be on with either me or with me and Dom together. Some of our greatest artists. So we're really excited that they're going to share time with us and SEN. So you'll have access to those guys. I'm very excited about that. Coming up next Friday on the Roundtable, I encourage you to come back. We have 2 wonderful drummers from Cuba, along with Aldo Mazza, who's run his camps down there. And we did a test. The gents they're going to just blow you away. So I'm very, very excited about that. And of course, Dom has his Roundtable at 2 p.m. every Thursday. But today, this has been really inspiring, guys. Keith and Fred, thank you for being here. Really appreciate it,
man.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Thanks so much. And Keith, I'll talk to you and Fred at some other time soon about some other ideas too, man. So thanks so much.
Dom, I need a lesson. I'm very serious.
We'll make some time to get together. We'll put our heads together for sure. I'd be honored.
Get my number from Joe, man, or whatever, vice versa. But I'm very serious, man. I'm working on some things, and it's like you work with Jim like personally. So
yeah.
I got questions that I need answered.
We will. You let me know what the time is. We'll work it out. We'll email. We'll set this up. Absolutely, gentlemen. Have a great day. You guys have been fantastic.
If this has been a great one. Thank you, guys. If the whole world was like the Sabian Education Network, this world would be a beautiful place. It would be a beautiful place. Thank you, guys. See everybody next time. Bye-bye.
All right, bye.
Bye.